Welcome to the We Can Do It Women movement, where women 60 and wiser step into the spotlight, make the rest of their life the best of their lives. I'm your host, Debra Morrison, a wealth building expert and champion for extraordinary women just like you. And I am over 45 years in the business of helping women secure their financial future. And I'm on a mission now to ignite a revolution. Yeah, showing the world that age 60, 70, and beyond, we're not slowing down. We are just getting started. And today's We Can Do It Women expert interview guest is none other than Kelli Richards. Kelli is a trusted advisor, growth strategist, founder and CEO of the All Access Group, and so much more. Welcome to the show, Kelli.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. So I do want to give our listeners and viewers some of your rich background, and yet it will be just a little thimbleful, clearly, because you're so accomplished. You're the CEO of the All Access Group. We're going to get into that, a consultancy that facilitates strategic business opportunities in the digital distribution between tech, artists, celebrities, film studios, record labels, consumer brand companies, and whatever else she imagines, because she is a pioneer in imagining and following through. She's a consultant, mentor, speaker, producer, coach, author, best-selling author. I have her book on my Audible. Sorry about that. The Magic and Moxie of Apple, an insider's view. I don't know if this is in focus or not. And I have been voraciously reading it. I've read it about once and a half. And this gives us all this rich insight into Kelli's time at Apple. And yet she goes so far. I mean, she's an Apple alumni, and you're just never going to take those words away from Kelli. I think it's right in her red and white corpuscles. But tell us, Kelli, about your beginning. Like at age 8, there was like a really monumental discovery at age 8. Talk to us about it.
There was indeed, Deborah. I was of the age at the time when the Beatles were huge, and my mom was a college professor, and I was surrounded by Beatles music all the time and everything about them, and clued in on the fact that there was a fifth member who was their producer, George Martin. He was the man behind the scenes, the wind beneath their wings,
Yes.
that made a lot of the magic happen.
Yeah.
And I said to my parents at the age of 8, I don't know what that man's doing, but that's what I want to do for a living. And I thought that what that was going to be was to be a record producer like him. And I studied to do that in high school. I actually went to recording academy courses and such. But later on realized that was not really the goal. The goal was that I was a catalyst for transformation. That's what he and I had in common. And that I was a visionary, and I could see things that others couldn't, see possibilities, imagine opportunities. That's what he was really doing. So that was the beginning of that whole phase.
Well, what a phase it was. And Kelli, you've been described, I've read voraciously around from other people's reviews and testimonies of your fine work. And it's just continues to fill in so many details, right? It's juicy little details and insights, because you're known as a precocious child, right? Obviously very much out there. And I have to say, when I first got my first Apple phone, and it was like Cupertino, I was like, where is that? Because it was everywhere. And
we refer to it as the center of the universe.
And it was the center
and I still live here. I'm still a mile from the mothership. I can't seem to escape the tractor beam. But it is my hometown. And it was because of that. And as it was Steve's Jobs' hometown, that's why Apple is here. That's why, he became my mentor, because we were homegrown, literally in the soil of where Apple would become and where the magic would be birthed.
Oh, and there Kelli was picking apricots, one of my favorite fruits in the entire world, because Cupertino was at least a huge producer of apricots. I now know after Steve's death, there's I think in his estate, right, a whole bunch of new apricots, whatever, being planted and whatever.
Well, indeed, and it was my suggestion to him that when he built that new spaceship campus, that he not overlook the fact that we were our history in orchards on the same land. That's what that land was.
Yes,
so I said, please be sure that you have part of the land reallocated to planting orchards, fruit orchards on the Apple campus. And he did do that. And there's all manner of apricot trees and all manner of fruit trees on that property now. So that's my
Oh,
little
wow.
contribution.
Oh, you made huge contributions. That was but one. So, all right, let's just picture ourselves. Kelli's there, in that hometown, and talk to us about at age 16, you're in high school, you approach Steve Jobs at a
Hmm.
cafe and ask for him to be your mentor.
I
How
did.
in the world did that come about?
Well, first of all, he was not the Steve Jobs on a platform pedestal that everybody now reveres him to be. He
Exactly.
was kind of this nondescript hippie type
Yeah.
that was sort of unclean, actually.
Yeah.
But he hung out at the same hippie cafes that my mom did. Who My mom was a local college professor,
Yes.
so I would see him around all the time.
Yeah.
And I was in a group in high school called Future Business Leaders of America, and they challenged us to go find a business leader to be our mentor. And there was only one name on that list, and that was Willy Wonka himself, because Apple was, in fact, the Wonka factory growing up in my hometown.
Yes. Yes.
And we had a lovely chat at one of these cafes. I told him what was going on, what I was challenged to do, who I was, what I was about. He sized me up. He asked me a bunch of questions and then said, let's give it a try. And that began, a 30-year relationship, certainly between he and I, 30 years plus until he passed, but also led to rewiring my brain around his thinking and his aesthetics and business principles and a lot of how I work then and now. And ultimately was a part of me getting into Apple to birth the music and entertainment focus for the company.
Yes, and you certainly did. So then you put yourself through college. I kind of like to do the chronological because
Sure.
I mean, people can grab the latest, and yet that I'm not digging in the 4 years. You put yourself through college at GPI Publications. You were a guitar player, keyboard and bass magazine.
That's what GPI was, those three magazines and
That
more.
was three magazines
Yeah.
together. Sorry about that.
And it
Then
also happened to be based in Cupertino.
yes,
So I was like
amazing.
Forrest Gump.
Yes. Well, then you moved to LA, right? So you
Yes.
get to a bigger music environment, Hollywood, and you began to rub shoulders with and make the most of networking. You are an amazing networker. So you become a young A&R executive. So for everyone that's unwashed, like I was, artist and repertoire, okay, at EMI Music in Hollywood.
Yeah, working
And
out of the Capitol Records Tower. Yeah.
yeah, talk to us about that because you spent a couple of years there.
Yeah, the role was really to manage the artists on the roster and then to go scout that was during the day, and then at night we would go out and scout clubs for new talent to sign. That was the role. And to
Wow.
bring in producers and songwriters to round out the artists that didn't write their own songs.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was an incredible learning experience. It did create all manner of incredible relationships, many of which I still have to this day. Unfortunately, a lot of the people in that world have passed, be they artists or industry colleagues.
Right.
But it led to somebody at Apple, because I had a lot of friends that had gone to Apple back home in Cupertino, reaching out to me and saying, look, the company wants to start a focus on music and entertainment. We think you're the person to help launch it. And that's what got me back home to Cupertino to do that very thing.
So you go back to Apple, and then 12 years in, you lay the foundation of what would later become iTunes. All
Yeah,
right.
so my role while I was waiting for Steve to come back, because I knew he would, he had
Yes.
been excommunicated from the company and
Yes,
kicked
he had
out.
been.
And I couldn't get arrested getting the music stuff. Well, let's just put it this way. My role while I was there managing it was to make sure every industry, the musicians and filmmakers were using the Macintosh as their creative partner of choice. But I couldn't get arrested with the existing Apple management team to do a consumer facing version of what we wanted to do until Steve came back. They didn't get the vision. And so it wasn't until Steve came back that that we were able to kick off iTunes. And at that time that he came back, the company was 1/4 away from running out of money and dying.
I know
And
that.
so he said to me, because remember, he'd been my mentor all along, even when he
Yes.
was outside the company. And he said, the good news is I'm coming back. The bad news is you're leaving. And go a mile down the road to your house, hang a shingle, and start your consulting practice. And just take advantage of all the relationships at Apple, all the ones you've built in the industry, and get going. And I'll call you, focus on music and entertainment again, and I'll get your help then. That's exactly what he did, but there was a 5-year gap between when he came back and had to focus on just the bare minimum to get the company healthy again,
Right.
and when he started iTunes. So what was I going to do for the 5 years? So I built my own practice a mile away from the company.
You know, the word is out on the street that Steve said to you, I now I'm just referring to him as Steve, but that Steve Jobs said to you that you could see around corners and envision possibilities and outcomes as a visionary that few others could. But of course, that's why he took you on as a mentee. He saw how brilliant you were.
Well, he
And
could see that because he had it too, of course.
yes, you were
Yeah.
peas in a pod. Well, I don't want, well, you were apricots in the same, whatever, but that was amazing. And I gleaned this, there were three basic tenets, if you will, that you shared, customer-centric focus. And you talk about that again and again. And just the more recent information I was reading even this morning, Kelli has published a million articles on Inc. magazine. Everybody go look at it. We'll give you show
Well, not
notes
just Inc., but on LinkedIn and a whole bunch of other publications as well. But yeah,
everywhere, right? But I mean, just the Inc. I mean, it's like
there
two
were a
pages.
bunch on Inc. at a time. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah.
And so customer-centric focus, and you're talking about like developing something that customers don't even know they want yet.
Well, that was Steve's language, but yes, people don't know what they want until they experience it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And that has proven out all to this day in my work as a trusted advisor, who really is a catalyst for transformation.
yeah.
People don't really understand that until they have an experience of it, and then they get it right away.
And they get it. Yeah.
Yeah. So some things are hard to explain in words. They're experiential. You actually have to go through a taste of them. And
Mhm.
that's what he meant by that comment with the iPhone. People didn't know that they wanted a device that would do the work of 4 devices because they'd never experienced it before.
Yeah. And you ticked off all that the iPhone does, and then at the end you say, "Oh, and by the way, we can use it as a phone." It
Right.
was so funny. So, you know, obviously, I am a, you know, I'm really a devotee of Steve Jobs. I mean, his Stanford speech was second to none, and
Indeed, I agree.
this man. Now, you know, the thing that really stood out, and to almost all of us, is the whole thing about you know, connecting dots at the, you know, you can connect dots in the history, right? But you got to believe that the dots will connect down the road to give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the worn path. You have followed that to a T, Kelli.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
it's basically called a leap of faith. You know,
Exactly.
that in other mythology and storytelling, you take the leap and the bridge appears.
Yes.
It literally happened in one of the Indiana Jones movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then the second of the three tenets, attention to design, which Steve was completely about. I mean, I remember his comment, like, if he didn't take that first calligraphy course in the college before he dropped out, you know, it might not have been so pretty, right? But boy, it
Exactly right.
was so pretty. And Bill Gates was just, you know, he was over in his engineer world, jealous as hell that Steve had so much spiz and so much flair. And then number three, surrounding yourself with the right people. You
Yeah.
have built such a community of devotees, and you have helped people switch their entire career. I read about a fairly famous person, and I'm just trying to figure out. I'm sure there have been a number of people, but you know, you say if things are going great and and then you come to, maybe you've scaled to the extent you think you can scale, and then you come to a wall and you're thinking, probably I'm thinking a little small here, and
Yeah.
you know you probably ought to pivot, and yet you don't have any idea what your next steps are. Call Kelli. And so
Yeah, it's all about reinvention.
yes,
People
yes,
come to these forks in a road throughout their life and their work, and often they just have no idea which way to go or what is next for them. And the problem is they've got blinders on. We're all myopic in our own worlds.
yes,
So the thing to do is to surround yourself with people who can see you um, through multiple lenses, in
yes,
multiple ways, see your gifts and talents, see what's possible for you based on what you're passionate about, what you've done, what you want to be doing, and
yeah,
help you craft a new narrative
yeah.
and a new roadmap. sort of the new yellow brick road, if you like.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
You talked about being able to approach anybody from a place that I've got something of value for you. You weren't just trying to, sneak your way in sideways. No, you came into every situation, including addressing Steve Jobs, and you had something to offer. And
Right.
I would just love to be a fly on the wall. Like sometimes, you think you have a hunch, right? And then I guess once you start to put a couple more dots together, and now you're just off to the races, being able to synthesize and strategize for people because they're still in the jar. They can't see it.
Yeah, very true. And I would say that the part about being able to open any door, forge any connection, that really is from the mindset of adding value to people. I genuinely believe if you reach out to someone you really do want to connect with, no matter how famous or, oh, I could never reach that person. If you're coming from the standpoint of, um, even if it's just a lyric in your song changed my life, you're not asking them for anything. You're just wanting to acknowledge and appreciate their work, let alone if you really do want to do something with them, then at least come to the table with some ideas about how you can add value to their world and their life. Otherwise, why would they bother to take time to talk with you? People are
Right
busy.
now. Yeah, you're exactly right. So the aspect of the overlap, how you're so skilled, pardon me, and seeing the overlap, right? No, we take it for granted now because it's in our hands, right? But you were at the fore, seeing the overlap between content and tech,
Yeah.
Hollywood and
And
Silicon
it
Valley.
took a long, long time. Those worlds spoke different languages.
I know.
I had to be a translator explaining one to the other. No, they don't work like that. This is how they work. These are their business models. This is why it would benefit you to try this. And that took a long time, at least a decade. And even now they're strange bedfellows, but they're working much more closely together because Hollywood has no choice. They had to embrace technology, much to their great dismay.
Chagrin.
See, because they didn't want to let go of their business models that have been working for 50 years. And every time we come up with a new innovation wave, it disrupts them dramatically, be it the internet or mobile or now AI,
Yes.
completely throws them off their game.
Yes, of
But they
course.
don't have a choice. It's a Darwinism. They have to evolve or die.
Right now. And your superpower is so needed right now, especially with AI
Well, but
exploding.
that's historically, Deborah. I do want to make the point because historically, and for most of my career, that was my world, was to bridge Hollywood and Silicon Valley. But I've expanded beyond that these days. I am now working with founders in companies that I'm sector agnostic. Some you would never believe the kinds of companies I would advise: satellites, vertical farming, fit clothing stuff. Nothing to do with those worlds. But the common thread is my belief in the visionary founders that I get to work with and the innovations that they're deploying to make the world better in every way they're doing it.
And you help them, you help them fly, you help them step more into their genius than ever before. And that kind of, a dear friend of mine, Dr. Susan Jeffers, wrote Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. She talks about our intuition being like a scout that's gone
Yes.
ahead, and then circles back and says, you guys, now over here, what, and
I'm a fan of her work too, by the way. And I did watch your TED Talk where you built it based on her whole book there. That was a classic. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Yeah.
thank you. Well, I loved her to pieces, I tell you that.
Yeah.
So talk to me about how you well, first of all, I want to tick off, or you could tick off, but I'm happy to tick off all of these people. I had to switch screens around right before here because of a tech issue, and so I'm a little bit okay, here we go. Over the last 25 years of your career, fortunate enough to work and collaborate with many people. All right, everybody, if you're not sitting with the chair with arms on it, just grab something close to you. Okay. All right. Who have been instrumental in defining their respective fields. Some have become iconic. Steve Jobs, Todd Rundgren. I listened to your podcast interview with him. Oh my gosh, everybody go and listen to at least that one. That was amazing. Stuart Copeland, Paul McCartney, Prince, Alan Cohen, Alan Weiss, Michael Jackson, and others. Holy camoli. This is, and I'm sure since then, because I'm sure
Oh
that you
yeah. A
can,
lot of those are unfortunately a lot of those people have passed,
they have, yes.
or it's been a while since we worked together.
Okay. Now talk to us. You are going at such a pace. I didn't read specifics about it, but my sense from piecing together was, you pretty much burned yourself out.
Yeah.
Or at least you hit a spot where you're like, oh boy,
I
I
have
gotta
I have
take,
done it a couple times, sadly, in my career. Yeah.
yeah. So talk to us about that whole element of introducing more grace to avert that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as a woman in the society that we all grew up in, um, I mean, I lived off of a checklist, all the things I had to do before I was 30, because, 30, that could be the end.
Yes.
So, getting your advanced degree, getting a house, your first great job, getting married, check, 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 check. But nobody ever said, but are you happy? And so I became an overachiever, the queen of overachievers. Um, if Madonna had not named one of her record albums Blonde Ambition, that would have been the name of my book.
Yes.
And so I really did push it way too hard and fried myself at a young age. And the first time that I burned out. And that's what led to, I mean, it was sort of an act of grace, even though I miss my company, my alma mater dramatically even today, Apple.
Yes.
But me leaving when I did was an act of grace that Steve saw and out of necessity. But it forced me to reinvent myself
Yes.
and go independent and realize that I could craft a life on my own terms, redefine success on my own terms, have a lot more freedom than working inside a big company, be able to choose who I work with and name my prices and all of that, and basically have a much more fulfilling, well-rounded life. And that led to me not only living a life that's a little more balanced with all those quadrants, but also then empowering other people to do the same thing.
Yeah, because obviously, if you're a musician on the road performing, I mean, you're grinding yourself into the earth, right? It's a grind.
Well, and losing relationships and dying early and all kinds of things.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was just thinking about my dear friend Doug Feiger as we're taping this. He was the leader of the band The Knack, which were huge at the end of the 70s, early 80s. And tomorrow marks the 15-year anniversary of Doug's passing, uh, too early from brain cancer. And
Oh,
he's sort of on my mind and in my heart today while we're taping this because it's just an example of what the industry can do to people if you're not mindful and you're not surrounded by the right people who can support you through challenging phases like that.
right, right. So, Kelly, because our audience is typically a mature woman, I read bits and pieces where you would engage in a new endeavor, and people would say, "Oh no," maybe they would accept you in, but basically they were saying, "No women here." How many times did you bust through that? Oh, it's never been done before. That's
Yeah.
not a woman's place. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, and I've most of the time in my corporate life, certainly, whether I was in the record industry side or in the music industry or in the tech side, I've often been the only woman in the room. Many, many times, more times than I can count. Usually the case.
Usually, yeah. Well,
Two
yeah.
male dominated industries in entertainment and tech. Um, I never really bought into it, is the truth. I never really accepted that.
Yeah.
I never really took it on. I never made it a thing.
Mhm.
I just kept going. Um,
Mhm.
I there weren't too many doors that were closed to me, as it turns out. Or if they were, I just fought harder to get them open.
Well, now we're talking too, because when you're fighting harder to do what white men walk through and do it, with the sigh of, okay, great, no worries. This all takes a toll. And so I simply want to convey that you've done magnificent work and busted through glass ceilings all the time. And yet that eye towards self-care, I want to continue to promulgate because life is short, as we know. Steve Jobs. I mean, my God, there he
Yeah,
is.
another example. Yeah, that gone way too soon.
Wait.
And so in that regard, I mean, I all but got a degree, but I didn't. I just read books for fun, and health, nutrition, advanced medicine, functional medicine, and I try to adopt that kind of a lifestyle for myself. But I've been voracious about getting as much information about all of that as I could over the past 30, 40 years. My
I see that
grandmother
you're
lived
a
to be
voracious reader. Yeah.
102, and my grandmother lived to be 102, and I fully expect to at least get to that point, if not beyond. So yeah, I don't plan to be one of the people that checks out early.
No, I think not. I think you have got a whole lot to experience and to share with us, and we're all blessed because of it and grateful.
Very
Um,
kind, Deborah. Thank you.
for sure. So you have, I want to circle back because Apple had a program, Kelly, where you got accepted,
Mhm.
only 200 students, and you got your MBA for free, 2.5 years. Apple paid, and you went
They
on Apple
did.
Time,
Yeah.
and it was that culture, it was that family. Like, what did you guys have? T-shirts, 90+ hour weeks, and we're loving it or something, right?
Yes. Yes, that's exactly right. All accurate. Everything you just said.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy. So, well, it's not crazy, but it's
But I have to say, as far as the MBA goes, yes, it was a great honor to be one of those people that was selected and paid for. And but I had to pay my dues every step of the way during that 2.5 years. Many people's marriages didn't make it. People had mental health crises. We still had to work our day job, even though it's a night and a morning a week to work on our coursework. Um, and I'm not even sure the MBA made a difference, even
yeah,
now. I mean, now we have kids even deciding whether they're going to go to college or not at all, let alone for an advanced degree.
exactly.
So
Well,
I'm not sure it ever really made a difference looking backwards, but it seemed like a big deal at the time.
yes, well, it was, and it's quite an honor to be
Yes,
chosen.
in
I mean,
that regard, yes.
that was rarefied territory. I mean,
Yeah.
hello, first to be an Apple and then to be chosen. Hello. And Steve, of course, walked out in college, and we got that. I think that the same descriptor has been used for both Steve Jobs and you, Kelly, and that is hot and cool at the same time.
Hmm.
That's a big, big job.
It's a matter of your demeanor, choosing to have a presence of living in your sovereignty and your agency and trying to stay cool and calm under most circumstances. Now, I would argue I've done a little bit of a better job of that than Steve did
Yeah,
because he would get a little hot-headed and sometimes not be able to be held back and blasting people. I don't really operate that way.
yeah, yeah,
But I think that your presence matters a lot in how you're perceived and how people think of you and in the world.
yeah. uh to pay, I mean, yeah, there are many, many stories about Steve being completely rude, crude, and ignorant to various people, and you guys had the firsthand look at much of it, and yet the
Although I
brilliance.
was never at the effect of that. He never blasted me in all the years that we interacted.
Wow,
But I
wow.
did witness him do it to other people more times than I care to
And
admit.
you wanted to, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But in your book, in that one of the, like, the last chapters, the first line was, "Thanks a billion, Steve."
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, he was single-handedly the most instrumental person in my life to this point anyway.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So talk to us about what is drawing you now. You're saying you're in all kind of verticals. Expand on that a little bit. We were interested in what's on your docket now. What's your forward thinking
Well,
take?
it really is me being playing this role of being a trusted advisor
Yeah,
to, gosh, founders, innovators, entrepreneurs, leaders of bigger companies, family office members, all the way to creatives, people that have had a fair amount of success and are looking to reinvent themselves. And I serve as a thought partner and a sounding board, a confidant, a catalyst for acceleration and reinvention, transformation for them.
yeah,
And that takes several forms depending on what their unique individual needs are.
right.
And it's
Um,
personal and professional. It's very holistic. I'm very holistic in my approach. I'm a multi-dimensional resource for them.
Yeah, I love that adjective, multidimensional. You think there that way, you operate that way. And of course, I'm going to say that that's, I think, a female characteristic in its finest sense, because we have that. I study the brain, neuroplasticity. We have that neuron chit chat back and forth that men do not have. And
Yeah, and
so,
that allows us to see patterns faster and see things that others could miss.
yes,
And
yes.
and I also mean to include, the realms of the unseen, spirituality, the universe, as well as more pragmatic. As when I say multidimensional, I bridge a whole bunch of different elements at once, including those things.
I
So
want
I'm
you to
used
talk
to be
about that.
taboo.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There's a little lag, and I apologize. I don't mean to talk over you. I want you to
Thank you.
talk about that because I read a couple things, and it's like you're given this, and I think you're open to a whole lot of sources of information.
Mhm.
And I'd like to know if you train for it, if you're a natural intuitive, and so forth. Channel, talk
Yeah.
about that.
I don't call it, I'm not a channel. I don't call myself a channel. There are
Okay.
people that do that
Yes.
professionally. But I am open to receiving information from all sources.
Yeah.
And that allows me to be a pretty good, if I follow my intuition, it's usually spot on. It saved my life at times. My intuition has. The information that I have received for other people has been extremely beneficial. It's not coming from a book. It's coming from something that I'm directed to share with them. And I did study metaphysics. I have studied metaphysics for the better part of 40 years.
Yes.
So I do understand spirituality and that whole facet. I feel like people that don't embrace it are probably missing out on a powerful source of information that could really make their lives a lot easier. But I don't make it my practice to try to, indoctrinate that with anybody. It's their own choice. I just say that I use information from all sources when I'm working with somebody, and that includes that realm.
Yeah. Well, I certainly believe in it, and it feels to me like it's a beautiful additive. I brought my little compass out because you describe yourself as a person that is really kind of serves as the compass for people, and that multidimensional thinking is central. You have been referred to, maybe self-referred. I'm not sure whose reference, but as a CXO. Now, again, for the great unwashed, I figured it out through Google, chief experience officer. Okay, so I'm not in
Yes.
the corporate world. Sorry about that. And so I'm like nose pressed against the plexiglass. CXO. Okay, the chief experience officer. And you say, as a CXO, you're the whisperer to these leaders as individuals. You ask the powerful questions that help them frame, right? And once they can start to think on their own, and then you engender your wisdom, be it from your book knowledge, your experience, or from another source or sources, that helps generate this big picture thinking and the disruption. I just
Yeah, it comes down
loving it.
to living in a mindset about what if and possibilities, as opposed to shutting down or living in a very constrained uh, mindset that's fixed or limited belief oriented. When I show them ideas and possibilities they haven't considered or solutions they've not tried, my favorite response is, "Gee, I never thought of it like that." And that's when I know we're onto something.
Yes, yes, like a human compass when you're ready for what's next, because people haven't thought of it, and you are the person out there with the flashlight. Like I say, there's a little song that I love, a small flashlight. Sometimes that's all we have is a small flashlight. But I think you're bringing in this floodlight, Kelly.
Well,
You're
more like a lighthouse. People have said a lighthouse, and I like that analogy a lot.
I like it too. So, talk with us about the advice that you might give a person that's contemplating that maybe has lived a little bit in their comfort zone, right? Because we know
Mhm.
change and comfort, they don't coexist, right? You're either going to commit the change and deal with the discomfort. Talk to us about the advice you'd give to maybe an older woman who's in our group that looking to do something a little bit more expansive.
Yeah, it's hard to give generic advice in a situation like that. But I think what I would do is really get to know the person in front of me, understand what makes them tick, what do they love to do, what have they never given themselves permission to do, what are things that light them up that they're passionate about, and maybe that's all they do need is a little bit of a nudge and permission to. It sounds funny to say it, but sometimes people need permission to embrace long-held, cherished beliefs and visions and pathways that they have had closed off, sometimes for decades.
Oh, I agree.
And then at this phase of their life, they now have the means, typically the time, to be able to pursue these passions.
Yeah.
And they just sometimes need a little bit of support to help them, to sort of push them out of that comfort zone, out of the nest a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think your history of the returns, if you will, on these thought processes and this multidimensional thinking are so vast and obvious that that would be the big why, right? Well, there everyone has their own why, right? And yet you would be there as the expert in guiding other people through these rapids, if you will. Um,
Yes.
and I like some people, at least in the generation like 60 and 70-year-old women, talk to us about the term disruptor, Kelli, because sometimes that grates a little bit on older women. Can you kind of bring us up to speed on the beauty of disruption?
Yeah, I think it's on how you look at that word. I liken it in a way to reinvention. Um, we get to the point that at this age range where we don't really care what other people think of us anymore, or shouldn't. And that's where we are encouraged to follow our own individual compasses and take the leaps of faith and follow the paths around our passions. Get out and travel, get out and see the world, do things you've wanted to do. It's never too late to start a company you're entrepreneurially oriented. You can do that at any age.
Yes.
Uh, so it's just a question of what are you willing to do to
Mm,
have what you envision you could have for yourself and what you want to create in your life.
mm, mm.
And sometimes we need help. We can't do it by ourselves.
I agree fully. I agree fully. I would ask people, all right, what do you want to do with this money? And it's kind of like deer in the headlights, right? I think that a pall of grief really has kind of cast on at least the United States, 2007, 2008 Great Recession, and then the pandemic, and people were like a little bit, numbed out, right?
Yeah,
And yet once we prime that pump, Kelli, I don't know if it's your experience. Once I say, well, you probably don't want to live in a lifestyle less than what you're living now. No, okay, great. Then that gives us a start point. And now it's like that permission and the lid's off, and now we can actually start that creative process. That's been my experience too.
exactly right. I agree.
Yeah. Thanks. So, how about the when people address and come up face to face with common challenges? How do you suggest, aside from your experience and so forth, the kind of like that's how probably people don't come to you that are stuck in that's how we always did it. But talk to us about some of the common challenges that people are experiencing today, even disruptors.
That's such a broad question, Deborah. I'm not sure where to start with it. Could you dial it in a little bit for me?
Yeah, I will. So how do you help people kind of dissect it and make it into small enough bites that they can take one or two steps, and then they can see that with a few small wins, they can envision, as you say, they don't need to know all the steps. We just need to know the next step or the two steps. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm, asking a pedantic question.
No, I think you just answered it.
Yeah.
You just answered what I would have said, is to break the elephant down into digestible bites and give them some things to work on that will create those small wins, build their confidence, and but towards maybe a blueprint of the future that we work backwards from together. And how do we get to that end goal step by step
I
and
love
resist
that.
that overwhelm.
Yes, overwhelm. Let's bust through that overwhelm. I love that because it coalesces with Steve's notions and what he said. Pull out. Start with the customer experience in mind, and then reverse engineer it. So
Well, and one of his famous comments was, "You can only connect the dots looking backwards."
looking back, exactly.
But
Yes.
if you have somebody by your side who is a navigator, a guide, somebody like that, you could probably get there a lot faster than trying to figure it all out by yourself, trying to reinvent the wheel.
All day long, and life is short, so you got to deal with someone like Kelli, and she's takes you to second base. You don't even before you know it, you're at second base, and now you're open with all new possibilities.
Hopefully all the way home. But yes. You
We're
gotta,
starting. We hire you. We're at second base.
right.
Okay, so talk to us about what you might be envisioning as to where, like, particularly entertainment, the digital age is going to take us. I mean, what can you imagine? I mean, Apple Watches and stuff. I mean, talk to us about what you might be envisioning in terms of the future, in terms of electronics, digital age, et cetera.
Well, I'm very bullish on innovation. Obviously, it's my life.
Yeah.
I do think AI is playing a critical role in that. I know it's very controversial. It's just an AI is simply just another wave, like the internet was, like mobile was. All these things initially do and will disrupt jobs, and jobs will be eliminated. But guess what? New ones will be created.
Yes.
So people need to sort of ride the wave on these waves of innovation. Um, As far as entertainment, I feel like people are doing more in terms of customizing their entertainment experience. They've got devices at home, they've got big screens, we have playlists, we have all kinds of ways to interact with the content that were never available before.
Yes.
So people are being empowered to and encouraged, in my opinion, to design their own entertainment experiences to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But forward-thinking filmmakers and such, um, I hope we'll see the day when they'll create interactive opportunities for fans where
Mhm.
you'll watch a movie and it'll have several different endings of different scenes. The audience will get to choose what they want and actually the ending of the whole thing as well, the ending of the film. Something I saw 50 years ago at a World's Fair, and I'm still waiting for that to become a reality.
I love World's Fairs. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Well, when I went to see Shrek, obviously, kids were laughing, and then we were laughing at very different parts because there were
Yes,
so many layers to it.
yes. And Pixar films are like that too. That Shrek's DreamWorks, but Pixar films are designed for audiences of all ages, and the adults get what they get, and the kids get what they get. Yeah.
But now imagining choosing a different, so you could go to the theater 5 times and pick 5 endings.
Exactly right. There would be the ability on your phone to choose from one of five different endings in a scene and one of five different endings for the whole film. Yeah. And then you would go back in with a different audience and the audience vote would rule. You might have a totally different outcome for the same film, you know?
Oh, that is so exciting.
Yeah. So that's one thing. Also, Apple's Vision Pro goggles that came out a couple of years ago, very expensive. Very few people can afford them or would even know what to do with them or how to optimize them in their lives. Um, I've always maintained that when they get to the form factor of being more like the Meta glasses with all the
Hmm.
functionality built in and a more normal price point for mere mortals, that'll be one of the next big things.
Yeah, yeah. Talk to us about those glasses because I've seen them. I don't even know the manufacturers. That's I don't know, but anyway, you have glasses and you can take a picture and you can record
Yeah,
things.
yeah. Right now, Meta has them in
Meta. Okay,
partnership with Ray-Ban. But Apple is a fast follower. So
okay,
Apple will take that ultimately, in my opinion, make it function better, make it look better, make it feel better, and
yeah,
at a better, price point, and will win the day as they always do.
yes,
But yeah, that'll be something where in the corner of your eye, you could just tap the side of your temple and you'd be able to see the weather and rain's coming. I better get out of this, thing. Or you take a phone call that then goes to your phone with your earbud and everything comes through, or you could actually watch a presentation while you're hanging out somewhere, taking a walk in the forest, and you're on a Zoom call and you could see the presentation. So all of this is possible. It's just a question of how fast it becomes a reality.
wow. So the whole adage from a social standpoint of us, I think it was in your interview with London. We used to walk down the sidewalk and we'd say hi to people and in certain towns, you'd beep the horn because someone's got. Now you're driving illegally and you're watching yourself, right? And like they would know it. Like no, we're just not communicating with each other face to
Now,
face.
now this, Deborah, is something that I have a pet peeve about. I call it the law of unintended consequences.
Oh,
Nobody thought about this at Apple. That
right.
that couples would be having date night, each watching on their iPad across the table from each other. Family dinners, everybody's in their own devices. If they're even sitting at this table at the same time, just what you described. Well, you're driving, which is totally unsafe and illegal. But that's the laws of unintended consequences. Those devices were not designed to be used that way, and that's just how people's behaviors have adopted to them.
How do you think we could kind of invent something that would at least stem that tide of
Well,
being
there have been some attempts, at least in terms of content restriction, to
okay, yeah, yeah,
have timers on phones where parents could set limits for how long the kids can watch things or
okay,
watch certain things at all.
yeah, yeah,
So there have been attempts to mitigate some of that, but it's a good question. I don't know that I have the answer for how to put the genie back in the bottle on that one.
yeah, yeah. So talk to us about the legacy that you'd love to leave. You've built and lived a legacy. What would you like your epitaph to read?
Well, I hope it reads beyond, the person that launched Apple Music. It's a long time ago.
Yeah, exactly.
I,
Yeah.
I I think I would like for it to be, something about she changed the world one person at a time or something.
I was hoping you'd go there because
Yeah.
that's a big part of how you describe yourself,
Yeah.
changing the world one person at a time.
Hmm.
Um, Develop that for us because it's been central to many, many articles I've read on you.
Yeah. Well, again, if I'm doing my job right as an advisor who's a catalyst for transformation, then not only am I helping the person that I'm working with directly, but it's creating a ripple effect for everybody in their world.
That's right.
And thereby me reaching a lot more people than I ever could reach directly.
Mhm, mhm.
So I say that.
Well, a lot, and I'll go back to Susan Jeffers, Dr. Susan Jeffers. In the day she was working in New York with the floating hospital and everything. And so there was Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield and
Yep.
and her and the other very famous woman. But they were all like, and I would have been, I'd have given a lot to be a bug on the wall, right? And so when you're advising and being the catalyst for so much disruption and positive innovation, um, do you have a little like client kind of a reunion at all, such that these people could be masterminding? I mean, I see, one in 10 make 50,
No, you're
if you're
absolutely right,
lucky,
Deborah. And
people that can.
actually I have thought about that. I haven't put it together yet, but I think it would be really powerful to bring some of these game-changing, world changer types together. And
Yeah.
I've just yet to pull the trigger on that one.
I'm putting my vote in.
Good. Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
I want to see that because you would be the exact person to completely capitalize on that, right?
I've done it for other people. I certainly did that when I was at Apple.
Yes.
And funny enough, some footage appeared that's 28 years old last year that I'd never seen before for an
Oh.
event that I had pulled together. And it was five incredibly powerful men, one of whom's passed on, but the other four were still living. And I shared the footage with each of them, and they were like, "Holy cow, that was one of the most wonderful things we ever did, thanks to you." And it was an example of that,
Wow.
sort of like a Gertrude Stein, salon type thing.
Yes, exactly. So I know you're a voracious reader, a couple or three books a week at least. Uh,
Indeed.
what are you reading now?
Right now, I'm reading Peter Diamandis' book called Longevity: How Not to Die of Something Stupid. And it's all about living longer, living healthier, trying to get past the escape, the longevity velocity meter that his sidekick, Ray Kurzweil, has prognosticated it's going to happen in 2030. If we could live long enough to get to 2030 relatively healthy, and that's only 5 years away,
Mhm,
the
mhm.
theory is that there'll be so much technology in by then that most cures for diseases or ways to mitigate diseases, prevent them, we will be able to take advantage of and live that much longer.
You're right,
So,
because it's not algorithmically. I mean, what is that? Oh, I should know the term, Deborah. It's not like if you live to, what is it, age 50 without a serious illness, the trajectory and the projections for your longevity, at least in the old tables, was so much bigger, longer. But then the longer you live, the longer you have the chance of living. And I think this is
right.
building on that. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's partly because of your own personal ecosystem, your own health, and how you manage it. And it's partly because of technology and what's happening in the medical world with prevention of cancer, early detection, treatments,
Yes,
solutions,
yes.
and on all diseases beyond just cancer. As all of that starts to coalesce, then that supports the theory that those of us that are reasonably healthy should be able to carry on for a lot longer.
Well, and I would be delighted if you and people as brainy as you would, be digging into the Alzheimer's and the more recent kind of connections with diabetes and so forth. And I was listening to a PhD that in genome theory, and I'm probably butchering all these terms because it's not my swim lane, but talking about it's no longer the case that we say, oh, well, my family history, because we're all filling that out on the doc, my family history, so I'm going to have a heart attack. Nonsense. We have the power to change a lot of this.
And part of it's lifestyle and
Yes,
healthy practices for living and exercise, good sleep, all that.
yes,
Not drinking, smoking, all of that. Part of it's a big part of it is nutrition,
it is.
feeding our body what it wants and needs, fueling ourselves to prevent disease. So that's a big part of it. I've just fallen into the rabbit hole on those topics out of personal passion for the past 40 years. And I read a lot of books on those things, and I try my very best to optimize my own health practices as well. I've got room to improve even now, but I'm at least very knowledgeable about it all.
Yes, and as I remember, you were kind of revamping your garden and so forth, and you have fruit trees and everything. How's that coming?
I don't have any fruit trees,
Oh no.
but
Okay.
I just published an article maybe 2 weeks ago on the benefits of having a garden sanctuary. And mine is 20 years old. It's my little patio garden in my townhouse. It's lovely, but it needs some help. So I'm in the process of looking to overhaul that myself right now. But my point in putting that article about out was to share all the beneficial side effects that you can have from having a little bit of a personal sanctuary for yourself like that in your living environment.
Well, I certainly think that writ large, and yet we are now, I believe, in what I actually am going to call occupied territory. There's a sense of overwhelm and the sense of chaos that otherwise is muddling many of our abilities to come back to the I am, right? And without the I am, we are going to stagnate both as an individual and people and in community, as well as a global occupation and people within the globe. And that really is, I saw that article on your garden, and I just thought, yes, let's control what we can control.
Exactly right. We cannot control the political, geopolitical environment, but we can control our own little patch of something in our backyard.
And also what grows here.
Indeed.
What grows here.
More importantly. Yeah.
Much more importantly, yeah.
We
And to
can
have
choose to silence social media. We can choose to not buy into all the political rhetoric. We can decide what we watch. Now we're going to get our information. Those are things we do have control over.
and we do. And I think it incumbent upon us that when we see that, okay, we have, all right, that was something that maybe I was, whatever, misled or whatever, or had a different opinion. And I like to talk about the work I do with older women around their money. Like they were fed a whole bunch of crap, oh,
Right.
the stocks are risky
And then
and
you've got to spend your time unwiring all that and
yeah.
helping
And
them
so I like
rewire a more healthy
metaphorically speaking, it's like pop their head open, pull that crap out so we can put good stuff in. And I think we
Exactly.
are, it's our responsibility now to
Yes.
ourselves and all of us, because we're more than our little atoms. We are
Yeah. And
definitely
I love what you said in your TED talk about compounding. My favorite topic from when I was a teenager. I got that whole thing about compound interest and how important that was the earlier you start. And man, I wish everybody understood that from when you get your first paycheck, put a certain amount aside for retirement. It would be like the pig that built their house with bricks, the three little pigs, you know.
exactly.
So
Oh
many
yeah.
people are in trouble because they didn't understand the importance of that compound factor.
Right. And so, okay, great. Best time to plant a tree 20 years ago, and the
Yeah.
second best time today. I
Yes,
mean, the cost of even waiting a year is stupid.
that's right.
When I took a gal in, a single gal, and she had a drip program, so it was all at a holding company, and she had Pepsi stock, and she just knew how many shares she had. She had like $86,000 worth of Pepsi, and I said, do you realize you have 86? Because she comes to me and like acting like she doesn't have any money. It's like, do you realize you have 86,000 of Pepsi? She goes, I do. And I said, yeah. And she says, I just like Pepsi in college. So I just put it like $100 or
Oh
50
my
bucks a month.
God.
Boom, and so it even compounding puts my eyes on stems, and I'm 45 years in the field of math and finance, so I couldn't agree more. Compounding is so critical in all the facets of our lives. Einstein called it, of course, the eighth wonder of the world, and he was pretty smart. So Kelli, this has been an absolute joy and a delight. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, because you have carved out time for us, and I also want to ask you how our viewing audience can touch base with you if they want to ping you with questions or something. I know you're a busy woman, but maybe we just want to ping you and say, thanks so much.
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, I encourage anybody that's curious to learn more just to visit my website. It's the same spelling you see here, Kelly with an I, Richards with an S.com. All the info is there, including how to reach me. The best email is just info@kellyrichards.com. And of
Perfect.
course, don't hesitate to reach out if you want to.
Well, Kelli's website is amazing. I should have mentioned that. And her book, I have this one on the Audible, and she's I mean, the
There are
articles.
several books, but that's the one that was relevant
Yes,
to this
there
conversation.
are. My bad.
Yeah, it's okay.
Tell us the titles of the other ones.
Taking the Crowd to the Cloud was one
Yes.
right after that Apple, right before the Apple one. And then years earlier, I did The Art of Digital Music, which was conversations with people in that first phase of music technology that I was instrumental in helping to put together.
Instrumental. Love that fun. So yes, anybody that's obviously remembers that the whole era. We were working on the farm, didn't get much access to a lot of music, but there we are. I've like tried to catch up ever since. I thank you because we have been really enriched with your spirit, your brain, your innovation, your what's next, curiosity, and followed through with, I'm bringing something valuable to the table. And I think that spirit is one that is good for all of us to embody. We're bringing wisdom, we're bringing that kind of life experience and imagination to the table, and it shall not be sidelined, at least under my watch. So,
And I'm with you on that one.
thank you so much. So, thank you for joining us, everyone, on the We Can Do It Women show. Remember, I see you, I value you, and your greatest chapter is just beginning. If today's episode sparked something in you, I invite you to join our vibrant We Can Do It Women Facebook community via the link in the description below. Until next time, I am Debra Morrison, reminding you it's never too late to shine, and pay attention to your money. It will surely pay you back. Thank you so much.